Hello everyone, and welcome to the special English edition of the Rendez-vous AgriUrbains webinar series. These seminars are made possible thanks to the support of the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food of Quebec, MAPAQ, and the Ministry of Employment and Social Solidarity. So today's session is presented in collaboration with URBAgr'inn Days as part of our shared effort to highlight inspiring urban agriculture practices from around the world. I am very pleased to welcome Camille Herbin, coordinator of URBAgr'inn Days, who helped organize this special session, and Petros, who will be our speaker today. So Petros is the founder and project lead of Trofý.Lab, an ultra-urban farming initiative based in the center of Athens. He will be sharing the story behind Trofý.Lab, exploring how agriculture can thrive in a dense metropolitan environment, presenting the evolution of the project, its business model, as well as the challenges and opportunities of developing urban farming initiatives in complex urban ecosystems. So before we begin, I'd like to mention that today's webinar is being recorded and will be made available on OLAB's YouTube channel by next week. A Q&A session will take place at the end of the presentation, but please feel free to post your questions in the chat throughout the session so we can come back to them later. Please note also that a short satisfaction survey will appear on your screen by the end of the webinar. It only takes a few seconds to complete. Your feedback is very helpful to us. And I'll now hand it over to Camille, who will say a few words about this collaboration.
Thank you, Jade. And thank you to the Urban Agriculture Laboratory, Laboratoire d'Agriculture Urbaine from Montreal, for making this webinar possible. This collaboration came about following the URBAgr'inn Days, an event held in May last year, focusing on urban farming, of course. And the aim of it is to stay in touch with the event's participants and to build connection and encourage the sharing of information. Those webinars and the collaboration with Jade and the Urban Agriculture Laboratories, it's also a way to hear participants that hadn't had the opportunity to be speakers last year at the event, to discover other perspectives, other projects and expertise. And of course, and that's why we do it with Le Laboratoire d'Agriculture Urbaine, it's not the purpose to stay in a close community, and it's even better that there are participants that weren't there at the URBAgr'inn Days, because sharing is caring. And that's it for me. The most important today is to hear and to discover more about Petros and Trofý.Lab. So Petros, I leave you the floor.
Thank you for inviting me to this webinar and for giving me the venue to share the story and the practices of Trofý.Lab, as well as the experience, the field experience that we have gained. I also believe that there is fruitful outcomes that can be gained out of this fermentation between different practitioners and stakeholders. I will start by saying a few things about me and what triggered me to look towards urban farming, urban gardening, or whatever you may want to call it. First of all, allow me to say that I am not an agronomist. I'm not a landscape designer. I was a nature enthusiast. I liked free camping at my leisure time, etc. But my main profession was in tech industry, and that's where I have been working at for many years. At some point, I decided that I wanted to explore something different. So for me to work actively in the fields of urban farming, it was more of a life decision and a pivot in my lifestyle, rather than straight line between my academic background and what happened in the course of time. So a lot of things that I will narrate today come from personal experience, come from sensory experience, and they are also combined to my personal moral compass and value set that brought me in a position to start urban farming activities in the city of Athens. Now, any of you that may have visited Athens, and I also see some Greek names here in the participants list, know that Athens is, or may have observed that Athens is a city with very, very huge and heavy construction density and population density. In fact, there has been little to no urban planning in the course of time. Athens, of course, has been inhabited for millennia, for thousands of years, and that has caused several issues related directly or indirectly, of course, to climate crisis and urban heating. So to start a project, related to urban farming in the city of Athens sounded something from outer space. To my friends, colleagues, ex-colleagues, to my relatives, my family, everyone thought I was crazy. That was already 6 years ago, and nowadays things seem to be going to a certain direction. So without further ado, I will share my screen. Astika bostania is a word that we use, is a term that we use in order to describe foodscapes and edible gardens in Greek language. Usually the word bostani is used to describe gardens or fields where specific crops are cultivated, like melons and watermelons. But in the everyday spoken language, it is also used to describe an edible garden. What we are trying to introduce is the concept and the aesthetics of edible landscapes, of foodscapes, as we like to call them. Now, what is a foodscape by definition? It is a landscape of how food is produced, distributed, and experienced within a place. This concept includes both the physical aspects and the physical space where we can develop urban farming activities, and the social interactions that come with it and shape how we urban dwellers access and relate to food in our daily lives. The venture of Trofý.Lab started with one question that came from my personal exploration of the journey of food, and it was whether we could actually produce food in the city. And then came a more theoretical question that has to do with whether foodscapes can become a key element of modern urban planning. And I intended to also present a slight historical background of urban farming that conceptually, of course, existed back in millennia in cities, in mega cities of the ancient times like Rome, Babylon, etc. And then during the Industrial Revolution, the cities' population experienced the separation of food production from the everyday life of a city, what resulted in radically shaping urban planning towards zoning and specialization, towards industrialization, gentrification, and other forms of human interaction with their surroundings. Now, in more we have seen examples like the Victory Gardens around the 1940s in the US, or the Havana urban agriculture model that erupted during the 1990s in Cuba, or even something more recent, the Paricultures project in Paris that started in 2016. And we have seen how these examples have managed to redefine the aesthetics and the usability of open spaces and facades in urban and peri-urban contexts. Of course, these examples have shown us that urban farming can actually provide and supply for families and households during asymmetrical crisis or during times of food scarcity, whatever the reason might be for this, and has given the opportunity to examine how urban planning could implement food production practices that would enhance food safety under the scope of unified urban food systems while creating short food supply chains within the city, meaning food that is produced and consumed within few kilometers within the city limits. That has, of course, many aspects. If we take a moment to reflect on that, we are not only talking about food miles, we're not only talking about fresh food produce that comes directly from the field, but we are also talking about traceability of the supply chain. We are also talking about self-sustainability in terms of food production. There is a quite new actually concept emerging as we speak that is already maturing in certain areas of the world, the concept of prosumerism. Prosumerism as a word comes from the words producer and consumer. So what it means is that a person or a household can be producers and consumers of their own food at the same time. A very famous theoretical scientist, also entrepreneur, I think, said always start with why. So why Trofý.Lab and why urban farming? Trofý.Lab is a group of people, is a team, a multidisciplinary team that we ourselves are wondering how and whether we can produce food in the city. A group of prosumers, because we grow and consume our own food to the extent that's possible, of course. And further to that, we are also a specialized field crew. We build edible gardens around the city. We do the maintenance. We design foodscapes. We develop projects together with municipalities, schools, and other organizations. And we are an SME that we run projects and we create salaries, we create jobs out of this. We are being paid our salaries out of these activities. And we are looking towards the next step that might be to have our own urban farm in order to produce food in market gardening context and sell cash crops in order to gain revenue out of it. So we are here today to share our experience from the field, and hopefully this might seem useful to you. This might seem fruitful to discuss further. This might open up doors for synergies, or it might as well be just sharing information that could be useful for anyone that is practicing urban farming, whether at their own private space or doing it as paid labor for others, or they are planning to initiate an urban farming project at their city, a community project, or whatever else. The key pillars of our activities are urban ecology and ecosystemic services, digital infrastructure and open source technology, construction and materials that we use in the urban farming projects that we develop, and of course, everything that has to do with social interactions, meaning the community engagement of any local community, whatever we might consider a community, a school community, or a neighborhood, or even a residential building. And with all that comes also our behavior as consumers of food. To start with, I would talk about the urban ecosystem. So wherever there is life, there is an ecosystem. We might not realize it, and we might miss the point, or it might become blurry for most of us living in a city. What does this guy mean by saying there is an urban ecosystem? But there is flora, there is fauna, there is microorganisms, there is, of course, human activity. So there is an ecosystem. We treat every garden installation as an ecosystem, meaning we work with the already existing flora and fauna. We try to enhance biodiversity, and we try to implement agroecological practices into the urban and prairie urban context. It's not always easy, of course, when you are in rural locations or sites. You have much more biomass to work with, to collaborate with. You have much more life to complement your food production. Where you are, when you are in the city, you need to either create life or work with very, very specific species that exist in within the city limits. So what we do, and what I would suggest everyone to do, is to believe in agroecological practices, believe in permaculture, believe in organic farming. It might not show results from the first seed, or from the first season, or within the first 3 months or 6 months, but if you let nature take its time, then you will see the results. Within the name, the very definition of the term permaculture, lies the word permanent. It's a permanent culture. So it means that we should be looking at the long scale of time, and not just at the immediate results that overexploit and overconsume the resources of the soil. What we are trying to do, and on this matter, I would like to point on the upper side of this photo, where we have a graphic that shows the increase in biodiversity, whether human-planted species or whether self-grown species of flora. Within an urban farming project that started April 2022, and within 1.5 years, then the amount of species and the biodiversity has grown more than 4x times, which is super important. On what has to do with the organic matter that we use in our urban farming installations, it is very important for us that we trust the sources of suppliers. We have very, very specific suppliers for earthworms. We have very, very specific suppliers for horse manure, and very, very specific suppliers for seedlings or seeds. That results in growing relationships built in trust and good faith, and it also results in knowing where where life comes from. I will give a very, very specific example that has to do with horse manure. We source our horse manure from a horse stable, a family business that has horses, used only for teaching horse riding to kids, etc. So they are not race horses. They don't feed them with steroids. They don't feed them with antibiotics. And we know that the horse manure that we get is organic, is natural, and is also of good quality. We believe in our trusted sources of material because we consume what we produce in the city. Another thing that we have been able to observe to observe practically, and we have also been taught in permaculture courses, in rural farms, etc., is that certain types of weed, let me rephrase, excluding certain types of weeds, most weeds, we actually want them. We actually need them in our farm. There is a lot of nitrogen fixing weeds and self-grown plants that reduce inputs of nitrogen-based fertilizers, for example, synthetic fertilizers of all kinds. And this is important when we are talking about the scale economics of any farming activity. Fertilizers cost money, everything costs money, from logistics to labor, from the truck that will carry the fertilizers to a remote area or to the city center, to the person that will apply the fertilizers. These are money. And let's not forget, of course, the emissions that come, and the environmental footprint that comes together with over usage of synthetic and nitrogen-based fertilizers. Another topic that I would like to mention is the value of pollinators. When we design a micro-farming unit, when we design or develop an edible garden, a foodscape, etc., we don't choose plants and seedlings just by their nutritional value or gastronomical value certain times. But as I said before, we also consider this as an ecosystem. And what an ecosystem needs, of course, is pollinators. So we also work with plants that invite pollinators, that are great, let's say, snack for pollinators. And this makes nature our ally. This is the overall concept of how we treat our urban farming installations. Nature is our ally. It's not something that we fight against. And that includes earthworms, weeds, pollinators, insects, whatever else you may think of that comes from nature. And the other pillar that's very important to us is our digital infrastructure. As I said before, I have been working for many years in the tech industry, so this is something that comes with me. I don't believe in the tech evangelism. I don't believe that technology will solve everything. In fact, technology, if not used properly, might create more problems than the ones that's supposed to be promising to resolve. But I do believe in open source technology and appropriate non-intrusive technology. And this is what we are trying also to implement in our day-to-day operations. So far, we have been able to develop 4 different digital applications, putting aside, of course, the digital infrastructure that we need in order to maintain our digital operations, digital marketing, etc., etc. We have developed our own mini weather station based on open source technology that can be an open source code that can be found anywhere on the internet, basically. And we provide as a service the installation of this technology and the data collection. So far, it has been installed in 2 pilot sites, one that belongs to a prominent cultural foundation here in Greece, and another one at a prototype senior high school at the very center of the city of Athens. And together with this IoT installation, we have been able to develop 2 digital applications, one related to plant monitoring, meaning we examine plant health and plant growth, and also some other metrics shown before, like, for example, the overall biodiversity of a site, and we are in the process of developing an application, a digital application that is suitable for HoReCa businesses, including and it includes metrics such as food cost and cost of production for HoReCa businesses that they want to accumulate, or they want to implement a farm to fork model for their raw ingredients and procurement. Last but not least, we are proud members of an international network that is called the Open Food Network, and all together with instances from around the world, we develop an online marketplace that supports CSA networks, that supports producers without intermediaries, that supports small producers associations. So we, as Trofý.Lab, we run the Greek instance, the Greek domain, and it has been recently launched. We will soon invite small producers to showcase their produce on the marketplace, and we will look for CSA networks in Greece to work together on promoting also the concept of community-supported agriculture. The platform is being developed again on the principles of open source code, and is licensed under the Digital Commons creative licensing. You should look it up. There is instances also in France, Germany, Canada, the US, Australia, Italy, I think UK, Ireland. So wherever you may come from, there could be an instance at your country. Usually the domain name is openfoodnetwork. The domestic domain of each country. Next topic has to do with constructions. So one of our core principles on what has to do with construction is to try to reuse and repurpose as much of the material that we need as possible. Wood and metal are, of course, easy to find in terms of scrap material, and easy to repurpose it if you have adequate tools and some practical knowledge on how to work with wood and metal, etc., etc. The big photo of this slide is from the installation of a rooftop edible garden, second senior high school of Athens. 80% of the construction materials, meaning wood and metal, that was used for this installation was scrap material that was repurposed by us. In case you are not familiar with the concepts of reusing and repurposing, I would just mention one or two benefits. Of course, benefit number one, the biggest benefit is that all this material somehow needs to be either excavated or melted or cut off or chopped off from forests, from subterranean levels, or from wherever else. Needs to be transported, stored, sold, etc., etc. If you use a piece of metal or a piece of wood that has already gone through this process, you save our planet from reproducing this amount of material that you need to use. Another benefit that we see is also saving our trash management systems of our cities from overload, because this material, if not repurposed, it would end up in scrap, it would end up in the trash, and then it would need to mobilize a whole mechanism to pick it up, take it to, I don't know, garbage sites or wherever else. So there is two ways in this chain of events that this practice helps towards. The small photo is from kindergarten, where we delivered a workshop for composting. So we played with earthworms, we gave them names, we explained and we decided why composting is cool. One of the reasons why composting is cool is that it has a really cool name. Compost sounds really cool in Greece, and it also resembles a very famous dessert. We call it komposta in Greek. Kids usually love it, so it makes a great affiliation to them. And we used old barrels that they had already at the school and created compost bins for the school. And we also gave some of them to the kids to take back home. We have delivered similar workshops on how you can build your own microfarm or start your own botanical garden with materials that you can find at your household, basically. And then we are also talking a lot about how we can use organic matter that we can find out in the nature in order to enhance biomass of our urban farming installations. For example, we also clean land plots that by law need to be cleaned ahead of fire protection season. And these prunings, or the wild grass and the weeds that we collect, we compost them, we ferment them, or we chop them off, and we make them great wood chip that we use as earth cover, or we use it. We make a liquid fertilizer, and we use it in our maintenance. I have also posted in this slide a small diagram, a small design of what we introduced as an irrigation water output mechanism. So in all of these raised beds that you are seeing in the big photo, there is this small output at the bottom layer of the raised bed. This collects the water that we use for irrigation and sends it directly to the wastewater network and pipes. What we are looking at, what we are looking towards right now, and what we are examining and doing some R&D on, is how we could use this water and how we could store it, but in scales that could fit to the rooftop of a school, or to the rooftop of a household, or even to the backyard of a household, so that it can be reused. And we are also examining the agronomic aspects of it, because it is water that comes from a soil that has been planted. So we are examining how and if some pathogens can be transferred through this water to healthy plants elsewhere. So it is a process. We are very confident that we will be able to use it. Of course, in DIY situations or in private gardens, etc., it's the easiest thing to do, because it is not a very big challenge to produce food and to be able to measure the conditions of the input. But when we are talking about urban farming as a concept for solid food production, for a supply chain that produces something that can be commercialized and can actually provide an alternative suggestion for our urban food systems, these are things that need to be examined for future reference, and of course in larger scales. Okay, last but not least, we are doing a lot of work with local communities. So another revenue stream that we have, and also our contribution to our community, is the hosting and organizing of workshops, living labs. We work together with schools, municipalities, NGOs. We work with CSR and ESG programs of selected companies, and we try to avoid greenwashing or pinkwashing situations. And it is also implemented in our field operations. And what I mean by that is that when we develop an urban microfarming project, an edible garden, a foodscape for an organization, for a household, for anyone that is interested to have an edible garden of their own, we don't just do a maintenance as if we were a typical conventional field crew, but we also want the garden owners to be present while we are there so that we can transfuse knowledge to them, we can enhance their understanding of how their garden works, and we can also hand it over to them at the course of time. Of course, this contradicts a bit the typical financial understanding and financial theory that says that you want recurring revenue you want to sustain recurring revenue in order to be financially viable, in order to be profitable, etc., etc. But we try to diversify our business model and our revenue streams from time to time, so that we can explore all aspects of urban farming, and hence we have the ability, and we also like it, to make sure that we share our knowledge, our practical knowledge, our empirical expertise with the people that own the gardens, so that they can start at some point producing their own food, together with all the aspects of wellness and let's say sentimental and inner pleasure that this gives you. Here is a quote of Latin American author, journalist, etc., Eduardo Galeano. Maybe you've heard of him. So this guy once said that at the end of the day, we are what we do to change what we are. So being city boys and girls and everything between, of course, to change the way that we have learned and we have been programmed to stand towards our food is something that will define us already now and in the future. Finally, I would like to share with you two books that inspired me to start Trofý.Lab, to start working actively on urban farming, to make this a way of living, and to make this basically my basic and my one and only income. The first one is Urban Jungle by Ben Wilson. It talks about urban ecosystems in general, but it comes to complement urban farming as one aspect of the whole spectrum of urban ecosystems. And the other book comes from a Greek scientist and author that I hugely admire. His name is Yannis Manetas. The Greek versions of his books have much cooler covers, if you ask me, but still. And this specific book talks about biology of plants in a way that reads like a novel to me. So he's a very sweet person, if you would ever come across to meet him. And if anyone would attend his public activity, lectures, and narrative, you would understand that he's a philosopher of nature, not just biologist. He talks about nature and plants with love and sincere affection towards it. So these two books have been very inspiring for me. I hope you would look them up, and I hope they bring out the same feelings for you as well.
Thank you, Petros.
Thank you so much, Petros, for this insightful presentation and for sharing the inspiring work being carried out through Trofý.Lab.